What's up, everybody? Today I get to shoot a video that I have been looking forward to shooting for 26 months now. I finally gotten this essentially barn find bike to a state where I feel it's pretty mechanically sound, and wanted to go through actually what I did to the bike, how I got it to this point, and then I also wanted to go through all the different tools and miscellaneous items that I ended up having to purchase to get it to this point. I'm an amateur tinkerer. I'm an okay bike rider, but I just really enjoy working on the bikes. I am not an expert at all at this, but there's probably a lot of people like me that you see something cool, like I want to bring that thing back to life. I'm going to go pick up the $500 barn find, and you get way in over your head, and you just don't know exactly what you're in for. This is not to be discouraging to anybody wanting to do that. I absolutely recommend doing this because this has been one of the most rewarding things I've done. I know this isn't a show bike, it's not done, but it is rideable, it is titled. I'm thrilled with how it's running right now, and I was hoping I'd get to share that with you guys. One piece of advice I would give to somebody if they were looking for their first bike, and they saw a decent, $800 for an old CB350, CL350, 200, whatever. Maybe not buy that if you want to ride right away. 2 months turns into 12 months, turns into 24 months troubleshooting issues really quickly. There's a lot of things if you're not, if you're not a mechanic, and I'm not a mechanic. I have an engineering background, but that doesn't mean I know how to make this bike work. It's said to be one of the easiest bikes there is to work on, and compared to other ones, it is. But there's a lot of little things that you'll get stuck on for hours or weeks or months that a mechanic they know it. And you have to learn all those stupid little things. And they seem stupid at the time once you figure them out, but it's what's held me up so long to get to this point. So I'm going to show you what I did to this bike. I'm going to show you the tools that I used. My buddy just bought he bought a CB350. Oh, the advice I was given: buy a rideable bike first. Buy something sound. You can get a Suzuki TU250 fuel injected bike under $5,000, I think, from the showroom floor. You want to learn how to ride? Get that. Learn how to ride. Buy the vintage bike second. Buy the repair job second. So let's get to it. I'll get to the bike. I'll get to the tools, and we'll get this show on the road. So this bike here is a Honda CL350, a 1973. This was the last year they made these before they went to the 360s, which, for what I can tell, is an inferior bike. When I got this one, it wasn't running. The engine has about 9,200 miles on it, which is pretty good, real good. The issue that this bike had was that it was home to many, many animals. I'm taking it that it spent a lot of its life parked outside and wasn't running. But the engine did turn over, which was good. I've had this bike, took it 100%, well, I shouldn't say 100%. I never split the engine. I didn't get into the transmission. But outside of that, everything else has basically been gone through, replaced most all of the rubber that was on there. And let's see if we can just start going through some of the things that I did. And I'll forget some of them, but we'll give it a shot. So starting at, where do we want to start? The tank. The tank was completely rusted inside. And the fuel lines, the fuel filters that were on here were just, they were blocked with rust and all the dirt that was coming through. They were here, and there was no way it was going to get running. I don't think that's what actually caused this bike to die, but basically I took the tank off and de-rusted it with Evapor Rust, and now the inside of the tank is pretty clean. Did that, left the Evapor Rust in it for about 48 hours, then I emptied it out. Then I rinsed it with water, put a hair dryer on it to try to dry it out quickly, and the whole thing flash rusted on me. So learned from that mistake, did the Evapor Rust treatment again, and then I rinsed it out with acetone instead, and that worked. The petcock that was on it was just way too foobarred. I ended up buying another one. All new fuel lines. I've gone through about 4 different types of fuel lines trying to find the right one that worked for me. I really like having the clear tubing. This is not the clear tubing, because I couldn't get the clear tubing to work right. So my compromise is these clear inline filters on here. It needed an inline filter on it just because there was so much crap in the tank. It's gonna start sucking stuff through. And this way I can actually tell if fuel is flowing. So if you're not certain about those types of things, having clear areas like that, it's really useful. So that's most of the fuel delivery system down to here. So like I said, this whole bike was pretty much all taken apart, engine taken off, frame out. I turned this room here into my spray booth. The frame was just a bear, an absolute bear to strip all the stuff off. I did it with aircraft stripper. I'll show you that in a little bit. But yep, stripped the whole frame of all the paint, lots of elbow grease, removing all the rust. And after all that was done, pressure washing it, all of that kind of stuff. Got that ready, primed up, and this is all sprayed out of a can. Probably Rust-Oleum is what I used. So it's got a primer layer on it, and then a black enamel over the top. So, I mean, the frame was the big part, but swing arm, just miscellaneous parts. Yeah, it all got painted in here. So yeah, is it going to be a lasting paint job? No, not really, because you can already see where it's going to getting chipped, and you can see the primer layer under it. I can come back here with the spray can and just throw a little bit more on there. Again, if you want to do this righteously, find yourself a spray booth and some good 2-component paint. I don't have that in this garage, so I didn't do it. We'll keep going here. Front wheel. Really, the only thing on the front wheel that I did outside of removing tons and tons and tons of rust was, well, it's got new shoes in it. If you've never played with a twin cam drum brake, something that if you know what you're doing, you do in a half hour. If you're like me and you don't know what you're doing, you end up taking, about a month to get it to work right. There are little index marks here. Hopefully you can see that. That mark there lines up with that mark there. I probably had this wheel on and off 10 times, and that's not an exaggeration trying to get it to work. But that is what it is. These tires were actually on it. I believe the previous owner, the previous owner, right, the one right before me, got new tires on it. The problem is I still want to replace them. On these tires, there is a manufacturer date. What they do is they put the year and the week. Somewhere on here it says 0942. So it was manufactured in the 42nd week of 2009. It's 2019 now. Most people say rubber's good for 5 years. I think on a tubed tire, so these are tubed tires. It says tubeless, but there's a tube inside of there. You could probably do it a little longer than that, but no, not for me. Something I could do on here if I wanted to is go through and end up replacing the spokes. I mean, that would clean it up quite a bit. I could go through, polish this a lot better, but I got to a point where I just wanted to get this thing running. So that's the front wheel, the front fender. This thing was all, I mean, it's dented up, but again, it was all orange and pitted, and I brought that back to life to a decent amount. These forks are not the original ones that I bought with the bike. I put a lot of work into the original ones that I got with the bike. I put new seals and everything in them and polished them up. I got them actually over there. We're going to get to that part. And nothing would align correctly. And I found out that the fork tubes on both of them were completely fucking bent. So ended up having to buy some new ones. And everything lined up like it was supposed to, and that was another thing that I got held up for a month on. That, you know, somebody knows what they're doing, they probably won't get held up on for a month on. Now that I'm looking at this, I need to have a wire through there to keep that from pulling apart. The dust boots are new. I like these much better than the little dust boot thingies. I don't like seeing the fork tube. I actually think these look pretty sweet on the thing. Indicators are the original ones on here. Again, these are pretty damn pitted. This is as good as I could bring them back. They flash rust pretty good, so I usually try to go over them with a little WD-40 and just rub it on it just to try to keep the rust from coming back. Headlight is actually the original. These are sealed bulb. This is something I'm gonna address at some point. I wanna put a new light in it. I haven't yet, but that would be a good upgrade. The speedometer, I took this whole thing apart. The speedometer and tachometer both work. But I took them apart and I replaced the bulbs in them. I don't think I did LEDs on this. Actually, I'm pretty certain I didn't. I think these are incandescents that I put back in it. I usually like to go LED on those types of things. If you're doing LEDs on the blinkers, you're probably gonna have to change your relay because an LED draws so much less. That's why you get that blink, 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 blink if you don't put a different relay in it for LEDs. So these are incandescent bulbs. I just replaced the bulbs. A really fun thing, looking at the triple tree here, is these are non-sealed bearings. Basically, when you drop the triple tree out, and this sucked when I did it, is they're just free-floating little metal balls, and that's how it moves on the steering. And mine was basically locked up from rust. So when you pull it out, all those little balls shoot all over. I think there's something like 40 of them on both the top bearing here and the bottom bearing. And the bottom bearing ones are gonna shoot all over on the floor. Learning that, when I do it again, I'll have something to catch them, and I'll do it, you know, more carefully. But I didn't know it was about to happen when that happened. So an upgrade that I really should have done, that I didn't, was put in an all balls kit and put in the diagonal roller bearings on both the top and the bottom. But I repacked it with grease after cleaning them up, cleaning up the races, cleaning up all the balls. The races weren't scored or anything because it wasn't really used much. But yeah, that's something I really wish I would have done once I had it all off. The steering, it feels real good now, but who knows for how long. Handlebars, for the most part, was all pretty good for me. Something I don't like, and I've got an issue with, I bought the cables so pretty much I replaced all the cables from Common Motor, but one I really am not impressed with was the clutch cable head. I put the original one back on. I couldn't get their little clutch cable thing to go in, and I couldn't get it to pull right. And I don't like the look of the old one, obviously, because I'd like the all black cables, but for now, I'm leaving the old one on because I could get that one to work. I couldn't get the other one to work. Cable routing, extremely important for the clutch pull. I have the tank on, so it's tough to see it, but there is a right way and a wrong way to route this clutch cable. And if you do it the wrong way, it feels terrible and doesn't work. Here's you can see where all the ground bees were living. Pretty much, I think what was living in here were a various assortment of vermin, birds, and ground bees. And the ground bees packed the entire frame full of some convoluted nest of horse shit and mud, and that's what the pressure washer was for once I had the whole frame off. And I guess I should have hit the engine more, now that the sun's hitting it this way. But yeah, that's what was going on there. Really important thing that you're gonna get stuck on is getting these engine covers off if it doesn't have the stainless steel Allen bolts. Most likely, well, this bike came with JIS screws in here, and they're light little, I don't know, aluminum or steel, whatever. Well, this, I don't know what kind of screws they are. Either way, they're gonna strip when you put, if you use a Phillips in them, they're 100% gonna strip. If the previous owner, and this bike's like 50 years old, used a Phillips in them, they're stripped. Getting the engine covers off was 2 months, scar, and not a whole lot of fun. I'll get into how to get them off when I get to the tools part of this. But new gaskets under there. The oil filter is under here. It's not a replaceable oil filter. You actually clean it. I don't think you can really get enough access just by taking this off. Basically, I think you got to take the whole side cover off, which means taking the kickstarter off, taking the pegs off. There's 4 little bolts on, or not little, I think they're like 14s. Take those off. I think the brake lever can actually stay on. So I replaced all these with stainless steel Allen bolts. This is something, if I'm recommending one thing, it's do this. This is going to make maintenance so much easier for you going forward. I did not replace the starter. I didn't even get the starter working. Clicks over, doesn't work exactly right. I don't care because the thing starts on basically 1 kick now. So that's it for this side of the engine, I think. Clutch plates I actually didn't replace. So you pull this thing off, you get access to the whole clutch basket. And I pulled all the clutches out, the clutch plates, and then I measured them with a digital caliper, and they're all well within spec. So I didn't switch those. Under here is not a whole lot, basically just tachometer. The coils on this, the coils tested out all right for me. However, because they were like 50 years old, and because I had the whole bike apart, and because I was redoing the thing, I just went ahead and I bought new coils. I think it was the right move, because who knows when the old 50-year-old coils were gonna fail. So it's got 2 new coils on it. I mean, that's like 90 bucks. New spark plugs, put the spark plug heads on here. And I guess going into more of the electrical, and the electrical is a whole lot of fun if you've never done this before. This is mechanical timing, so there is no computer controlled timing or anything like that. It's a condenser under there and 2 sets of points, and those points are actually mechanical little springs that get activated by a cam, an eccentric cam. So as it moves around there, it pushes the points to a point where they actually allow a spark to go down into the spark plug. Behind there is the reason I believe this bike ended up dying and becoming a project that nobody wanted to work on anymore. And there's something called a mechanical advance. So when you're idling, it's spinning and the speed is correct for that speed, 1,000 RPM to 2,000 RPMs. However, you want to advance the spark as you're trying to get up into higher RPMs. And because it's not computer controlled, there's actually what they call a mechanical timing advance. And it's a little thing on springs, and centrifugal force, as it spins faster, those springs move out, and it actually changes when the spark goes. And the mechanical advance on this one was completely seized. And that's why I think this became a project that nobody wanted to work on anymore. So I took the entire mechanical advance apart, soaked it in Evapor-Rust, cleaned the whole thing up, re-greased it, and we got that running. New points are on it, new condenser is on it. The whole points adjustment you have to do, there's 3 things you gotta do in order to get those working right. There's a cam chain tensioner under there. So your cam chain goes from the bottom and it spins the cam up here. That's what opens and closes your valves. So in order to do a full valve adjustment, which I've done a couple times, I actually got a decent video on that. Unfortunately, I shot it with a crappy camera, so that is what it is. But you need to change, or you need to set your cam chain tension, and then you need to set your timing, and then you can adjust your valves. And there's a lot of very good videos about how to do all those things, so I'm not going to get into exactly how to do that, but there's a lot of good videos on how to do that, and it's something that you'll want to get acquainted to. Need a feeler gauge and everything to get this working right, a timing light, etc. So what else do we got here? I donated my kickstand to somebody else, so I took this one off of a parts bike. One of the things that I did on this, it probably didn't need to do, but I did. This is the swing arm axle here, and it comes with some grease Zerk fittings that I have no idea what they are. They don't fit like a standard grease gun that you'd buy. So I actually tapped out a little bit larger hole, and I put in some, why do I want to think they're I don't know what size they are exactly. 3/32 is in my head, but that doesn't sound right. Anyway, I put standard Zerk fittings on here. So now I can put a grease gun on here and actually maintain
the axle. Your clutch adjustment is here. This is another thing where I got held up for a long time trying to get that. Like I said, I could not get the replacement cable to work correctly, and I had to put the old one back on, and then I got the clutch working right away, so that was good. New chain, sprockets, all that. As I said, most of this stuff is painted. It's not a great paint job, but it's a whole lot better than it was. Carburetors, completely took those apart. Boots, those came off. New carb kit, you know, change up all the gaskets and everything like that. You know, standard carb work. There's a whole lot of stuff about carburetors out there, but these are CV carbs, constant velocity carbs. The one thing I didn't replace on these carburetors that maybe I should have, I did not put new diaphragms under there. Maybe I shouldn't trust the 50-year-old diaphragms. That's something I'm gonna do in the future. Just, they're expensive as shit though. They're like 30 bucks for one, if not more than that. So I just haven't done it yet. One thing that's nice about the CB versus the CL, if you want to pull these carburetors off, the whole exhaust is coming off because you can't, they're held in by the air filter. And you can't get the air filter out without getting this exhaust off. With the CB, runs all the way around the bottom. You can pull it right off. New air filters are in there. I didn't want to, again, it's another expensive piece. I didn't want to have to try to troubleshoot, is it a bad air filter? So I was like, screw it. We'll throw the 50 bucks per air filter into it. And then I don't have to worry about that. The exhaust, which is really the centerpiece of this bike, probably the one cool part about this, is a hooker 2-in-1 performance exhaust. It sounds awesome. Again, this thing was a mess when I got it, just an absolute mess. And the headers were too far gone. I couldn't bring them back. This is a lot of elbow grease and work to get it to this. This is probably gonna rust again, but it's polished and it's pretty smooth. So this is just a black paint, high temp VHT paint that I put over the front of it. What else do we got here? What else do we got here? Good question, Matt. Rear wheel, yeah, this is probably the ugliest part of the bike. I'm gonna get new tires for this, so when I do that, I can do a better attempt at cleaning the rear wheel up and trying to get it to sparkle a little bit better. Right now, it's not great, but it is what it is. I got to a point where I just wanted to know that I could get this thing running. And so put the rear wheel back on without giving it too much attention. Rear brake is way easier to adjust. It's a single cam. Again, there's an index mark, and I think I actually have this one a little bit different. I think I might have it one tick off, but this is where it feels best to me, having it right there. Bike with a center stand. If yours doesn't have a center stand, get a frickin' center stand. It is so much easier. Little toolkit here, and I went through and I actually filled it up with a couple more tools that I wanted to see on this bike in case I have a little roadside adventure. And man, I got through most of this. How did that take you 24 months, Matt? Oh, I don't know. So what else do we got? Let's pop the seat up. Most of the wiring, I shouldn't say most of the wiring I redid, but I redid a substantial portion of the wiring harness just because these old, come on. I'm afraid to break this key. Why is that being silly to me? I've only got the one key, and if I break it, that'll make me for a really sad day. There we go. Okay, so my bike didn't have a main fuse when I got it. I put one in. I feel more comfortable having that. Why is it doing this? First time I've ever had that happen. It's on the video. Anyway, so I didn't have this piece. This is a new piece, new battery. It's a non-sealed battery, so I had to fill it with the acid. You get that all going. I should actually probably pull this thing out and check the levels. If it's not right, get some distilled water. I actually got some battery acid too if I needed to. Most of these terminals, and actually I just did this one right before, I'm going to advocate not using electrical tape on the bike, but I noticed that this fuse thing that I bought didn't have anything covering one of the terminals. And then as soon as I tried to do it, this terminal broke. So I just recrimped a new end piece onto it. So new battery, new rubber piece here. This piece feels like it's going to break every time you pull the tank off the bike. It just feels like it. And 50-year-old rubber, there's a good chance that one's already broken. You're probably going to want to get a new one of those. All the electrical does work on this bike now, which is awesome. If you've never troubleshot electrical gremlins, you're in for a real treat. As I said, most of the rubber's new. You're probably going to want to replace most of the rubber parts if you can. You don't have to do everything. If you just want to get it running, you don't have to. But there's certain things you're just going to feel better about having them new. Gaskets, seals, O-rings, stuff like that. Most of the electrical, the trickiest part of the electrical is hidden inside of here. So once you get the headlight bucket off, that's where your big bee's nest of different wires are, and that's where I was doing most of my wiring, crimping, and all that kind of stuff. I would not skimp on a good crimper and some good terminals. If you use those cheap little terminals, they're just standard generic automotive ones you get at AutoZone or something like that, you're just asking for trouble. Get the ones that see correctly, crimp them correctly, everything like that. So I probably just forgot about 100 different things that I did on this bike, but that's my rundown on it. Yeah, I'll probably remember one once I start talking about some of the tools, but let's just see if we can give this a quick kick so you can hear what it sounds like. We'll give her a quick kick. So I forgot, I've been messing with the idle and trying to get that right and messing with the air fuel. I got the idle set a little high, as you can see there. But yeah, that's the bike. That's it. So now we're gonna get into the tool part. The part where if you're not certain what you're getting into, whatever you spent for the bike, I would expect to spend at least as much in supplies on putting the thing together, and that probably doesn't even include spare parts. That's just tools.